Beliefs that preclude progress is a topic that can be explored a little bit. What does that mean? It means that it is possible to adopt worldviews, beliefs, convictions, meaning, such as if kind of taken, such as if accepted and internalized, can, on principle, stop any possibility of progression, of growth, namely towards goodness, right? Because there's all kinds of progression. There's progression towards bad stuff, progression in criminality, progression in depression, but progression towards goodness. Practically speaking, progression towards goodness means that we are moving in a direction away from being small little specks of selfishness and self-will, alienated from any and all, with all the consequent and concomitant issues of mental health, depression, anxiety, uh, fear, all kinds of things, right, that we certainly encounter, right, in this connection. So there are certainly, again, things that we can, or beliefs that we can hold, worldviews that we can hold that would put a hard cap towards any such progress. Right? We hit that wall and there's no going forward. What are some broad classes here that can be discerned amidst these sorts of beliefs or worldviews? One would be the commonly discussed ones, which are personal. These are, say, stories that I tell myself, which make it unlikely to impossible for me to succeed, and consequently for me to mature, for me to become a bigger person, a better person, excuse me, a person with less complexes, a person that is more able to relate in a healthy way to his or her fellow people. What are some of these stories? All kinds of stories if we get specific enough. But broadly speaking, it seems that we have an absolute need for an non-negotiable, perhaps it's better to say, need for self-esteem, for not feeling like an absolute nothing, for not feeling like an absolute nobody, for not feeling humiliated and put down, and so on. Unless in a given instance, that's by some kind of sick twist what a person wants or thinks that he or she wants. But in principle. So we say then that no matter what tools a person has at his or her disposal for the attempt to secure some share of glory, some share of success, some share of desired goods, those needs remain to feel a certain type of way. Meaning, we see if a person has the opportunity and has the tools, he or she may well be willing, and again, assuming the presence obviously of desire and such in character, may well be willing to go to extreme lengths to be somebody, right? To be a champion, to be some kind of business mogul, to be very famous, to be a conqueror, to be a super powerful politician or even warlord or something like that, right? To strive to be the number one fashion model, the number one social media celebrity, and so on. Right? Now, even if I don't have such tools to try to carve out some distinction for myself, I'm very strong, I'm very smart, I'm very wealthy, I'm very successful, I still have those needs. Right? Internally, I still don't want to feel like nothing and nobody. I want to feel like a winner, not a loser. Right? And consequently, if I feel that I cannot pursue success in a straight way, right, in a forthright way, then I'm liable to spin up different kinds of narratives and different kinds of stories that make it okay, that make life livable, that spare my pride, that spare my self-esteem. So, for example, a person can have an elaborate story involving multiple elements concerning his or her upbringing, his or her nurture, his or her genetics, his or her society, all kinds of things. And the punchline of the story generally is, whatever the details are, that it's not my fault that I can't succeed, and I still am worthwhile, and I still could succeed in theory if I was more lucky. If things went my way more, if I didn't have this deck of cards, I could probably be even better than you, whoever you are. But because of these circumstances outside of my control, I can't succeed, and it's too bad. But I can spare my pride, and I can sit here on my pride indefinitely. Again, that tends to be the bottom line. Get to the point. Whatever this story is, that's the point. So that's one such version. If we adopt such stories to spare our self-esteem, we are playing ourselves. Why? Because the bottom line, in fact, is not that to spare one's pride. The bottom line is to mature and is to become a better person. It's not either to have some kind of tangible result for its own sake. For that, we could build a robot, and the robot might be able to be way more efficient than us. We could build a computer software, and it could be way more efficient than a human in something. So that's not the point. Right? Like a chess player computer can presumably now beat any human chess player. It doesn't mean that there's no point for human chess players to play chess, because the point is maturation, the point is competition, the point is character, the point is relationships, and so on. So a person that adopts some such story, they may spare their sickly pride and narcissism, but they probably preclude that possibility of maturation, because maturation doesn't happen in a vacuum when I'm simply, in a little box, mentally and perhaps physically. It usually happens when I'm out and about, I'm pursuing something, I'm trying to succeed, I'm trying to realize my potentialities, I'm trying to become who I could in principle be, modest as that may be, trying to secure some share of some sort of success, modest again and comparatively slight as it may well be. So those stories then obviously are extremely antithetical to that end. What about going a bit beyond the personal? We see that we can also tell ourselves stories again that do go beyond the personal, such as also make the possibilities of human success, of human flourishing, of that movement and progression towards goodness, improbable to impossible. If we could abstract from all kinds of stories that are specific enough of this kind, what perhaps their punchline might be is that human beings do not stand in any kind of organic relation to the whole. Whatever it is that I am or could be, I am by necessity cut off from anything beyond me, from anything above me. Any kinds of values that I could try to realize, any kinds of ambitions that I could conceivably harbor are strictly and solely idiosyncratic. They're strictly and solely subjective and personal. They do not and cannot bear any relation to anything beyond me and mine. Aside from, as it happens, maybe they can bear some relation to a group, to a bunch of people, to a society, but nothing beyond that. To phrase it perhaps otherwise, right, in question are all sorts of dogmas, all sorts of views that pit, again, a human being as an isolated anatomy against, for example, a vast, uncaring universe, right? Vast spans of time, or, for example, that suggests that reality is of a kind that does not at all permit the plurality that seems to be a fact of life and that seems to be necessary when life have a point, right? There are such monisms, quote unquote, as could be called materialistic, as could be called non-materialistic, but the point is the same, right? There's just some kind of totality which does not permit anything other than itself at all. The materialistic monism would be the basic version. Everything is made up out of atoms. Excuse me. A human being is really a bunch of atoms, and that's about that. So-called consciousness is an epiphenomenon of atoms that are in the skull, and it's from that epiphenomenon that human values can form, that love forms, that aspirations form. So clearly, that is purely then idiosyncratic, purely subjective, and cannot have any relation to anything beyond a geo, or should we say spatial temporal kind of atom, such as is one's brain, such as is one's anatomy. Other such monisms that are not material might posit perhaps an absolute from which plurality cannot be derived and to which plurality does not point, which would make the status of all human aspiration, human individuality, not even an illusion. An illusion would be saying too much, nothing at all, which is interesting how that would be affirmed, but whatever the case might be. So those are also enemies of any worldviews that would permit that growth towards goodness. So what can be said, excuse me, in summary, it could be said that we need personal stories and we need broad world encompassing, it could be said, beliefs such as make the human situation sensible, such as permit progress towards goodness. It would be a task to really point by point delineate what kind of features such stories may have. But broadly speaking, it seems to make sense to say that there needs to be room in my world vision for individuality and for its movement away from alienation, isolation, selfishness, self-centeredness, toward something better, towards wholeness, towards unity. There needs to be the possibility of, again, genuine individuality that is not an illusion, that is not by accident. There needs to be the possibility that a human being can harbor aspirations and can realize values such as are organic excuse me, to the whole, as opposed to made up, as opposed to fantasy. And on a personal level, it's very helpful to frame things in a way that's conducive to growth. Right? Forget about sparing my pride. Forget about sparing that dark idolatry of self, which could have me shut down my life completely, just so that I could say I could have, I should have, I would have, just so I don't have to feel the feelings of being a nothing, of being a nobody, of losing, of competition, of something like this. Instead, get after it. Right? Try something, do something, pursue some ambition, and find a narrative, a personal narrative, which creates the opportunity, or which has the opportunity for success. Both again on that personal level and on that all-encompassing level as well. So we can think about it. Thank you for listening.